Hi everyone, a tube of Germaline antiseptic cream here with rhyme signatures, the nerdiest music review this side of you try coming up with something creative and original for this section on every single video. And today we're going to be doing a review of the new Blackbraid album. Blackbraid 2. American black metal often gets the short end of the stick in terms of its public perception. It is often, although not wholly, considered to be the under-the-table supermarket brand of black metal when compared to the premium luxury label of Nordic black metal. Now, loath as I am to agree with sweeping generalisations, I do feel that there is a teensy element of truth to this. American black metal often feels like it is several steps behind their European cousins in terms of adventurism, creativity, and honestly just pure ballsiness. There are exceptions to this, of course there are. That's why this is a sweeping generalisation and not a blanket truthism that any defiance to will be met with the scowling frowns and tuts and disapproval from the cult council of the blackest of all metals. But from my own personal experience with the genre as a whole, American black metal is oftentimes just missing something. So, enter Blackbraid stage left. And I'm not going to mince my words here when I will politely describe this one-man project as the potential great sinister hope of American black metal. This manages to take what makes the Nordic variety so great and mixes it with the genuinely fresh and exciting flavours of Native American theming and instrumentation, creating something that is neither Nordic nor American, favouring neither style over the other, but managing to sound like a perfect balance between the two. I will be honest, the first Blackbraid album managed to pass me by, call on whatever excuse you fancy, but in truth I simply more often than not just don't have the time to listen to everything that falls within my wheelhouse. If I tried, I'd never have the time to talk about anything. But I am extremely grateful for the fact that I picked up on the buzz surrounding this one and went out of my way to make sure I gave it its dues. Because, my esteemed and fabulous audience, Blackbraid 2 is a triumphant achievement and easily one of the most important black metal albums since Sunbather, and deserves just as much attention and praise as that album managed 10 years ago this year.
Oh, but Mr. Rhyme Signatures, Sunbather isn't black metal.
You shush. It's close enough. The point I'm getting at is that Blackbraid 2 is setting off a similar reaction to me that Deaf Heaven's genre-breaking opus did back in 2013. This feels like it could convert those who aren't normally into this kind of music. I mean, sure, okay, Blackbraid 2 is definitely a black metal album, there is no denying it. We have the typical wintry aesthetic, the shrieking tremolo-picked guitars, the gigantic rolling drums, and the pained, mournful-sounding vocals that you'd come to expect from the genre. But I feel there's a curious accessibility to the music as well. Despite the record's hefty 66-minute runtime, it rarely feels too lethargic or overwhelming. A great deal of how this album manages to maintain a consistent level of engagement is just how well paced it is. Now, there's a lot of tracks here that reach into the sort of 7 to 9 minute range, and 2 that breach the 11-minute mark. But there's plenty of shorter, interstitial tracks that are placed with care and precision to allow the overall impact of the record to have these moments of breathing space, where you can take stock of the absolute face-pounding that you've been given prior to them. The opening track of Autumnal Hearts Ablaze, leading into The Spirit Returns, is a perfect example of this kind of give and take. The atmospheric, acoustic-driven introduction gives way to all the tropes you'd come to expect from the genre. But while Blackbraid 2 certainly isn't changing the rulebook on which black metal has been written, it's how good the handwriting is that you'll notice the most on this album. The riffs are superb. Every guitar lick and passage is super memorable and never hangs around too long. There's always just about enough out of each riff and segment to feel satisfied by it without getting too full. The drums are absolutely relentless, and Skarskasawa's vocals and lyrics are fantastic. He has an exceptionally commanding presence, and you really feel the punch of the delivery behind every line. There's weirdly, of all things, a decent little bit of Metallica going on in this. There's some of the tracks here, they're from, this guitar tapping solo that doesn't sound entirely outside of Kirk Hammett's wheelhouse, to some riffing that bears a striking resemblance to Fade to Black. It's a curious but not unwelcome familiar feeling at times. Now, these obviously aren't the only familiar sounds. Anyone who's ever listened to any of the classics, Bathory for example, will feel right at home on Blackbraid 2, especially when the closing track, a cover of the aforementioned band's A Fine Day to Die off their classic album Blood, Fire, Death kicks in, as this absolutely sings of Blackbraid's chief influences. But what Blackbraid brings to the table that is new is the indigenous influences and sounds. Black metal, and honestly metal in general, has long been crying out for more representation from Native Americans, and I couldn't think of a more fitting champion than this band. Make no mistake, this isn't a huge departure from the typical Nordic playbook. The primary sound here is absolutely Scandinavian, but it comes with these little notes, these flutters of something deeper, more intimate and personal. There's almost a palpable history in the music, as Blackbraid flirts and skirts with classic Native American instrumentation in places, mostly serving to act as like a guiding light and pathway for the rest of the music to flow via. The midway point of the album is where things really demonstrate just how strong this release is. Moss-covered bones on the altar of the moon and A Song of Death on Winds of Dawn take up about 24 minutes of the album between them, and you feel every single minute of this sequence. It is often hard to remember that this is a one-man band, as the scope of the sounds on offer really do feel more than the sum of their parts, and rarely is this felt more than on these two tracks. Black metal has always been about conjuring an atmosphere, and Blackbraid 2 manages this in an oppressively overwhelming fashion. These two songs alone could serve as an educational tool to many aspiring black metal bands out there as to how to make something that adheres to the audience's expectations, but won't necessarily scare off people who are new to this. The instrumentation is clear, the vocals are raspy but intelligible, and just the structuring of these songs is immaculate, managing to feel extended but never boring, and expansive but focused on their goal. It's a tough act to follow, and I was honestly expecting the last third of the album to suffer a bit, considering how much the last two songs are packed in, but Blackbraid nonetheless managed to keep the freight train rolling. Another perfectly timed segue track in the form of Celestial Passage leads us into the final salvo of the thrashy twilight hymn of ancient blood and climactic sadness and the passage of time and memory, before the album wraps up with the Bathory cover that I mentioned earlier on in the review. It really is an extraordinarily complete record in terms of what it offers. Blackbraid 2 manages to do that rare thing in music, especially lengthy stretches of music, by constantly offering you just about the right amount of infectious earworm riffage, but counterbalancing this with massive scope and scale of atmospherics. If you focus on nothing but catchy hooks, they all bleed into each other and cancel themselves out, and if you're nothing but atmosphere, you'll feel drawn out and tedious. Blackbraid have struck the balance, the perfect diet of scale and hook, and have made for what can only be described as one of the most affecting and important black metal releases I've heard in the better part of a decade. But of course, no album is truly perfect, so nitpick I fear I must. It's an oft-cited idea that black metal gets a free pass for having quite lo-fi production, and in most cases I can kind of agree, but I'm a prog lover at heart, you know, and I, hot take, personally believe that most black metal could stand to benefit from having a slightly cleaner production palette, and Blackbraid is of no exception. The drums are mixed far too loudly into the album, in my opinion. It can get a little bit overbearing at times, especially during some of the more intense moments, such as the beginning of A Song of Death on Winds of Dawn. The record is also possibly a tiny bit too long, and I do feel that perhaps maybe the Bathory cover could have been, released as its own separate entity to bring the album length down to, under an hour. It kind of feels like the first album at 36 minutes was too short, and the second album at 36 minutes is too long. But between them, they're just about right. That being said, complaining of having too much of a good thing is most assuredly up there with my diamond slippers are too tight of first world problems. So, what else can I say about Blackbraid's Blackbraid 2? This honestly feels like it's the kick up the backside that American black metal has been crying out for a very long time now. It is absolutely the best album in the genre in 2023 so far, and could potentially bridge the gap between fans and non-fans owing to its relative accessibility. Certainly as far as the genre typically goes, at least. Recommendation is to get yourself a physical copy of this one. It's an incredible achievement from a single man, and Honestly, if we keep getting albums of this quality as their career continues, then Blackbraid is about to become the gold standard for modern American black metal, against which all others are certain to be compared to. This is all, of course, my opinion on the matter, as you know, guys, so if you have listened to Blackbraid 2, please tell me what you thought about this record in the comments down below. If you did like this video, please do share it around with anyone else who you think might enjoy it, and please do, as always, consider subscribing to the channel for more content. If you really do like what I do, please consider checking out my link tree in the comments down below, where you will find my various socials, my coffee link, all the good gubbins down there. And until next time, guys, keep your rhyme signatures very odd.